Hey class, this lesson is going to cover quadratic functions, and we're going to start off by looking at the parent function. The parent function is something you hopefully might remember from Algebra 1, and the function is y equals x squared. So in order to get the parent function, let's go ahead and start off with the table. So inputting some values in for x, we'll start off with 0. So inputting 0 in for x, 0 squared is 0. So y is equal to 0. So we have our first point for our parent. Okay, so choosing some numbers, some positive numbers. So we'll choose 1, 2, 3 in the positive direction, -1, -2, and -3 in the negative direction. So now plugging in a 1, 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4. Plugging the 3 in, 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. Plugging the negative numbers in, -1 squared, which would be -1 times -1 is 1. -2 squared, which would be -2 times -2, which is 4. And plugging the -3 in, we're going to get 9. Okay, so now that we have our table, we're going to go ahead and plot these points on the graph. So starting off with 0, 0. And let's do the positive side first. So 1, 1. So 1 on the x, 1 on the y. 2 on the x, 4 on the y. So 2, 4. And then 3, 9. 3, 9. So now we have part of our graph. So going on the other side, notice these numbers are the same. And that's because the graph is symmetrical on both sides of 0, 0. So going the other direction, we're going to go 1 unit to the left and 1 unit up, 2 to the left and 4 up, 3 left and 9 up. And then we'll draw in our graph. And the shape of this graph is called a parabola. Now, all of the graphs and equations that we're going to be looking at, we're going to be comparing to the parent function. So now let's take a look at some other equations, and let's learn how we can compare it to the parent. Okay, so let's take a look at this equation. Here we have f of x is equal to 2x squared. So don't let this fancy notation mess with your brain. F of x represents y. Okay? So anytime you see this kind of notation, whether it's f of x or g of x or p of x, it's all equal to y. So this is the same thing as saying y equals 2 times x squared. Well, first of all, how does this change if we look at the equation from the parent? Well, notice that the x squared is getting multiplied by 2. So what's going to change here? The x values or the y values? What do you think? Well, let's find out. Let's first of all start off with our original point at 0. Our origin, we plug 0 in for x. 0 squared is 0. 0 times 2, 0. So our vertex point, that's the name of this point here, our vertex is going to stay the same. Okay? All right, let's move down here to 1. If we plug 1 in, 1 squared is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. So compare that point to the parent. So the y value changed. How many times? 2 times. Times 2. You see the pattern? So this point's going to be at 1, 2. Now notice how that compares to the point on the parent. We call this a vertical stretch. A vertical stretch. When the y values are multiplied by a number. So let's plug 2 in. So 2 squared is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. Compare that to the parent. 2, 4. 2, 8. So let's plot that one. So 2, 8. Okay, I don't think we'll plot the next point, but we'll figure out what it's going to be. So hopefully you see the pattern by now. All of these y values are getting multiplied by 2. And you can see that right here in the equation. We're multiplying by 2. So 3, 9 times 2, 18. No room to plot that on here, so we won't plot that point. So going the other direction. Now, what did we learn about a parabola? It's symmetrical about the vertex. So if we know this side, then the other side should be the same. That's right. So going to the left, these values should match. And plotting those points, -1, 2, and -2, 8. And then trying to draw this wonderful parabola. Not the easiest thing in the world to do, but we'll do our best. So we have a parabola here. Sorry, doesn't look very good over here, but we'll try a little bit better. Sorry, not perfect. And so since we're multiplying the y values by 2, we call this a vertical stretch. A vertical stretch. Now, what do you think is going to happen with this equation? Let's say we have g of x equals 1/2 of x squared. So I want you to write down a prediction. So what is your prediction for this graph, for this table? And what words would you use to describe what's happening here? Okay, so predict the graph, the table, and what words would you use to describe what is happening? And kind of go by my words, but use your own words. What words would you use to describe what's happening to the graph? Okay, guys, I hope you're having a good evening. I was able to keep this video under 10 minutes. Yay! See you tomorrow.